You cannot find another fictional character in the history of fictional characters who's had this kind of impact on humanity. Art, literature, music, education, science, and world religions. You will not find one. And since you cannot find one, it's a reasonable inference that Jesus is something more than a fictional character. So there's something about this impact that speaks to the historicity of Jesus. But you also will not find another mortal living human in the history of humans who's had this kind of impact. I looked at all of them. You look at all the people in the first century. Ask yourself, who in the first century has had the kind of impact of Jesus? These are world leaders. Nero had no impact on the history we live today, but Jesus did. You won't find another deity or religious figure. You won't find another person who claimed to be the Jewish Messiah. You won't find another world leader in the history of world leaders who's had this kind of impact on those 5 most important aspects of human culture: art and education and science and literature and music. So if you can't find another human living, human mortal, there's a good reason, a good inference is that he's something other than a living human mortal. In other words, it's not just that this kind of impact is unique enough to demonstrate his historicity. It also speaks to his deity, because it turns out if he is who he said he would. Now think about who he is. Okay, he's a nobody. He doesn't come of royal lineage, doesn't have wealthy parents. He's not born in an important city, a nowhere town. Then he's raised in another nowhere town. Never travels more than about 200 miles to do his entire ministry. He only has 3 years to get that done. Not only that, he has no power, no money, he has no prestigious education, he has no family that can support him, or wife or children that can extend his legacy. He never wrote a book, never wrote a play, never led an army, never led a nation. He was nobody of significance at all. And the people who were actually in power, they were hunting him. The religious people were rejecting him. His own family members, his own disciples were betraying him, were leaving him, were denying him. Then he's falsely accused, brutally executed, and they have to borrow a grave to bury him. Okay, this is the most unlikely person to even have regional influence in the first century, let alone global influence for the next 2,000 years. There's something about Jesus that's different. And you got to ask the question, well, why? Okay, it's not his teaching. I mean, his teaching is fantastic. It's exceptional. It's divine. But you can probably on the pages of other, Buddha and Confucius, you can find similar principles being taught. So it's not that, it wasn't his stature. He's not even unique culturally, socially, ethnically, nothing. But one thing is unique about him that nobody else can say is he rose from the grave. And interestingly, he has unique, unparalleled influence, and he possesses the one unique attribute. And it's nothing to do with this. It's all about the resurrection. It's the only thing that separates him. And it separates a person who is clearly separated from everyone else. So I think it's reasonable for us to say, okay, so that's why this makes, in other words, if you said to yourself, okay, which of these 3 scenarios makes sense? He's just a fictional character that someone drummed up and really was popular. That explains all this? Or you say, oh no, he's just kind of a wise ancient sage in the first century. That explains all of this. There's a lot better known wise sages from the first, century and before. Or he is the man who rose from the grave, who claimed to be God, had the authority of God, and then demonstrated his deity with the resurrection. Okay, which of those 3 options leads to where we are today in terms of influence? It seems to me of those 3 options, option 3 is a better explanation for what we have.